The opening track on A Dramatic Turn of Events is called On the Backs of Angels, and you can get that now on iTunes. And it starts with a clean / acoustic arpeggiated opening. The other interesting thing about this intro is the time signatures, and you can really break it up in many different ways, but just to keep it simple, it's a measure of 4/4, then a measure of 7/4, and then 2 measures of 4 and a measure of 7, and the whole thing can be played with an even chord and note click. So a couple of noteworthy things about that intro. First of all, the way it was recorded. It has 2 clean guitar tracks. One of them is totally clean on the left. The other one has a phaser pedal that's on the right. So it gives a nice kind of stereo image. And then there's also double-tracked acoustic guitars, and then also double-tracked Nashville tuned acoustic. So there's 6 guitars on there, and it kind of gives this nice thick 12-string-ish type of thing, like a la Pink Floyd. And the other thing is just about the technique. I'll explain how I play it and what I'm thinking about as I play it. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, the opening chord is an E minor add 9. I'm just fretting it in such a way that I take advantage of a bunch of open strings. So the low E and the high E ringing around the middle sort of cluster of the chord. So the cluster is here, and then the open low E and high E surround that. Also, I'm not using strict alternate picking on this. I'm kind of doing, as I'm playing from low to high, doing a lot of downstrokes, and then I start alternate. Something that I do a lot for some strange reason. It was a habit I got into, but it sort of feels really comfortable for me and sounds very even, as opposed to doing strictly alternate. So watch my right hand. So you see the consecutive ascending strings are done almost in a sweep sort of style. And then the alternate starts. The other thing that's noteworthy is that there's a trick to doing this in that you have to sustain the open strings. And that's what kind of gives it this dreamy sound, especially with the double tracking and the phaser on it and everything like that. If you didn't have that, it would just sound sort of plain and staccato. So you have to make sure that your left hand technique is such that you get a nice arch and you're getting away from the strings that are ringing. So watch how I play the opening phrase and listen to all the ringing of open strings that's going on. So it sounds a bit dissonant here and there, but that kind of is the whole mysterious nature of this line. So I started by using the E minor add 9, where B is in the melody with my second finger. And then I changed that B to a C. So it's just kind of like a C chord over E. And then from there I play a melody on the D string, and I have the open G, B, and E strings ringing out. So the melody is... There's a lot of chromatic stuff going on, but the open E and B and G kind of keep the tonality of this E minor thing going. So after I play the initial line, to play this next chord shape, I incorporate my pinky to get the F sharp in there. Same here with this, it's like an F chord over an E. For that nice little tension, and it resolves. The second time through, it begins with the same figure that we began with. And then what happens, this is one of those moments on when you're writing something that you go, yes, and you make this discovery. So just by moving the same lick over here, down to here, we found a natural resolution from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. There's one other little twist there. So you kind of have this F sharp 7 as well, and then the E minor, a little Chopin-esque. We're going to take the song Invisible Monster off of A View from the Top of the World and get into it in a bit more detail. So this song came out of us wanting to write a song that was, I guess for lack of a better term, mid-tempo, after having written a whole bunch of songs on the record that were very proggy, very dark, and instrumentally driven, long songs, you know, bombastic, lots of playing, everything all like that. We had written most of the record, and it was actually Mike Mangini who brought up the idea of trying to write a song that was more of a mid-tempo piece to balance out the record. And so we went about doing that. And this song kind of came really naturally to us, like right from the get-go, as soon as we had the tempo. And a big part of this song is the theme. There's this reoccurring theme, even though it, you know, this isn't like the type of song that would be in a concept record where it has multiple parts and it's really involved and long. It's sort of a shorter type of song, but thematically it's really, really driven, and it's really important to the song, kind of sets the whole mood. And what I want to show you is how that theme was presented in a couple of ways. And basically what we did was we had this main melody that goes something like this. That's basically the melody that we're doing. And it appears in different ways. Sometimes the guitar is playing a riff and the melody is sitting on top in the strings. You know, Jordan playing string samples and making this real sort of cinematic orchestral approach. Sometimes it's only in the guitar riff, which I'll show you, this type of thing. And sometimes it's the guitar really taking on the melody completely. And so that theme you're going to hear throughout the song. And sometimes it actually, like in the beginning of the song, actually sets the song up. And sometimes it almost acts as like an additional chorus. When the vocal tag Invisible Monster happens, that theme always follows. So it's like a little bit of a character following the invisible monster. It might be that guy there. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's looking at me. All right, we'll ignore him. So let's start with how it's presented once the song actually kicks in and what's involved in the guitar playing. This is an example of something that actually, if you guys remember, several years ago, Andy and I talked about using just 2-note chords to create riffs that were kind of very much in the Dream Theater-y, Queensryche thing, and we had a whole thing about that. Like, so this uses that technique. So what I basically did was take the melody that's sitting on top and incorporate that into the chords. Now I extended them a bit. You'll see that. So it starts out with E, and the melody note is actually the 9th. This is also something that's cool, just as an aside. We're starting the melody on a note that's not like a resolved tone. It actually starts right away with tension. A resolved tone, if this was an E minor, could be E, could be the 5th B, could be the G. You know, if we would start them in, or but we didn't. We decided to start on the 9th, and the 9th is like an unresolved tone, but it creates tension right from the get-go. So the first chord to get that ninth in is actually root fifth and ninth. That's prog chord of the century. You got to know that to be able to play this style of music. And then bringing the melody down. Goes into the flat five and then the perfect fifth. I'm using a little mute technique with the pick in between on the E. And then here's a neat trick that I believe we went over in that previous lesson I'm talking about, where you could turn this into a very cool metal minor chord just by moving that ninth up a half step. Now you have an E minor, and instead of playing an E minor this way, it actually, with distortion, for some reason, this has a cool sound to it. So the G continues the melody here. There's a little bit of a chromatic movement there, and again, you have a cool chord shape every time. I mean, this first chord, which has the E with a C on top, and that could pretty much be an inversion of a C chord. And the perfect fifth, E, and the flat five. So you get all these cool chords. And then the melody goes. So I shift all the way down to the lower octave on F sharp and G. And then it goes to a C, but it has this Lydian-ish type of sound in the melody. So this whole melody is being played using these 2 to 3 string Queensryche Dream Theater-y chords, proggy chords. And anyway, it sounds like this. All right, then it has a B section, which basically states the melody again. But instead of just going to C, what we're going to try to do here is resolve to E, which is where the verse is sitting. So this obviously starts in E. This should be really easy to get it to E at the end. But there are certain chords that actually do that really, really well. I think they happen to be either a half-step resolution, which will make this dark and kind of more Phrygian, which in this case would be an F. Like that's something you hear all the time in rock America. Or the fifth, which is actually really going to give you that feeling like it's resolving. So in this case, we actually decided to do both. So we do the half step, we got a little Phrygian vibe for a second, and then B. So that would be F, and then down to B to resolve to E. And the cool thing about that is that it actually creates these fifths that are a flat five away from each other. So it gives a little bit of a diminished vibe, but it's also resolving. So and down to E. So from C, and again, when we're writing, I mean, there's so many different ways to do this at the end. I mean, we could have done a million things, right? We could have went, that's one way. You know, whatever. But in this case, we decided to have this double Lydian thing going. And then finally, a big 5-chord B to resolve. So the whole thing with the part A and B sounds like this. So, I mean, I do things usually in a very methodical way, and I tend to maybe start with just sort of warming up the left hand. that's a good way to just get the blood flowing in that hand. And it's sort of easy to do that with patterns that don't necessarily go through a particular scale. It might seem like a waste of time, like you're not really playing in a key, but it's just the purpose is to get the blood flowing. And one of the ones that is, I don't know, it helps to really warm up is this pattern of ascending in groups of 5s and descending in groups of 6. And it's like this sort of pattern. That's the pattern. It's a pattern of 5 notes. All right, now when you connect it, it doesn't have those little breaks in it, so it sounds like that. Now at the end, I kind of added an extra note, but when you get to the last group of 5, that last note there, you start the pattern of 6, which is, and you just go down on each one. All right, so when you connect it, it's like, like that. And what I'll do is I'll generally start in the first position, and this is something I've done forever. I just go up chromatically, and I'll go up to the 12th fret or so, and then come back down. And you can think of that in a couple of different ways. Generally, if you think of it as like a 16th note thing, it sounds a little syncopated, but it's still easy to do. So So I'll do that. There are a couple of things about doing that. You do it without stopping. So if you start from the first fret and go all the way up, and then it's sort of the stamina thing as well. And you can do it at varying speeds. I mean, you don't have to do that type of thing to a metronome. Like now when I was doing it, I was kind of started a little slow, sped it up. And the thing is to try to get all the notes to come out clear and consistent. And in the fact that it's legato means we're not really going to pick too much. So I'm only picking when I'm changing to a higher string. So right there. And on the way down, I'm not picking at all. And so that's something that I'll do. And I do different finger combinations. Like maybe I'll start doing 1, 2, 4. I'll go all the way up, all the way down. Then 1, 3, 4, like I just showed you, all the way up, all the way down. Then I'll do a stretch of 1, 2, 4, all the way up, all the way down. Then a stretch of 1, 3, 4. And that should pretty much complete that little aspect. I mean, the idea is like a warm-up before a show. You don't want to just blow out your hands to where you're completely fatigued and you can't play the show. So if this was like a legato session, I would do a lot more than that. But that's pretty much the way I would start out.